The biggest scandals, record deals, and market shifts in Los Angeles in 2023. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today is Wednesday, January 3rd. I thought it was Tuesday for a second. Obviously, the first of the year was on Monday, so it's a bit of out of whack this week. But today, actually, the video I'm going to discuss and talk about is about, as I said, the scandals, the record deals, and the market shifts that we saw in LA real estate in 2023. I thought actually, as it's the start of the year, giving a kind of roundup of some of the headlines, the big stories that we saw in the last year. Now, I will start this with political influence in real estate. Now, I discussed in some previous videos, but we saw some really big changes in some of the markets, especially Beverly Hills, West Hollywood, some of the more luxury markets in LA, and how business is going to be conducted. These laws have had a big effect, and so it kind of has shown this heavy influence of politics that we haven't seen to this degree in real estate in the past. These are measures that I don't agree with. One of them was Measure ULA, which effectively meant that there is a transfer tax on properties over 5 million and 10 million. It was sold to the voters as a mansion tax. However, it affected every single real estate transaction, whether that was multifamily deals, i.e. apartment buildings, driving up the prices of rent, or whether that was commercial. It was a commercial office building that now had, and most of them are over 5 million or 10 million, that had a 5% transfer tax, driving up prices. It was effectively to fund and help homeless in the LA city area, and that I completely understand. However, we have seen massive mismanagement of those funds in previous years. There's been money that's been raised, I believe $2 billion over the last 5 years, and it really hasn't had an effect that I've seen. So again, these are all my personal opinions. I'd love to know if you disagree, but that was one of the measures we saw. Another one is the wildlife ordinance. Now that has come into place east of the 405 and north of Sunset. So that kind of Sunset Boulevard, the famous street that runs through West Hollywood. That has meant that now there are certain laws in place. I'll give you some kind of basics. You can't develop bigger than 30% of the lot size. So if it's a 10,000 square foot lot, you cannot build a house bigger than 3,000 square feet. You cannot have fences and walls over 4 feet. You cannot build a house bigger than 6,500 square feet now. So it is a lot of change, and I think the reason for that was to effectively reduce the amount of mega mansions built in those areas. I think that obviously for local residents is a good thing. This construction was pretty crazy, but that affecting what someone can do with their property, a property that they've bought and they own, and the potential value for that. I think a lot of people own incredible location properties that potentially they would sell for a lot of money, and now developers or people who are going to build their dream homes are not interested in those, so the prices have plummeted. So that is politics in LA real estate, something I don't agree with, and I think it's a big change in 2023, but as I said, I'd love to hear your thoughts. So we had a bit of a market slowdown in 2023, rising interest rates, but that did not stop some of these massive transactions that we saw, celebrity deals. And so these big name people that actually in most of the transactions of the very high end, we actually know who they were who bought the property. That can be pretty rare. A lot of the time when you see these massive transactions, they're bought under LLCs, and the people that buy them do not want their privacy, they don't want their identity, they want to disclose, they want to keep everything as private as possible. But the big ones to note were Beyoncé and Jay-Z. They bought a house in Malibu, setting the record in California at $200 million. I believe there was also $10 million of furniture purchased in that. What I've heard, and this is a rumor, but the previous owner, who I don't know who it was, actually used to store $1 billion worth of artwork in the property. So it doesn't look huge from the outside photos, but I presume there is a huge amount of property under the ground. There's a lot of security, etc. So that was a big one. The other one was the largest home in America, and that was at the top of Bel Air, and that property sold for $125 million at auction. The developer developer and the banks that foreclosed on the property, I believe, actually spent over 165 million building it. And so the person that got it was the founder, I believe he's called Rich, who founded Fashion Nova. He paid at auction $125 million. And I think after closing costs, it was about $140 million. Now, that is an insane amount of money, but the house was about 110,000 square feet. So you are buying a property which is the biggest in America at just over $1,000 a square foot, which in Bel Air is not that expensive. So that was a really big sale as well. So that was some of the big deals that we saw. There was also, you may have seen the squatter case in Brentwood. I'm in Brentwood right now, that's where I live. But it was a very strange situation that actually, again, is kind of driven by politics. This was a lady called Elizabeth Hirschhorn. She was dubbed the tenant from hell in kind of news stories. And it made headlines because she was an Airbnb guest of this guest house for I believe he was a doctor. And she ended up not paying rent for 570 days. Basically was part of the LA's rent control law, which means you can't evict tenants. So effectively, this woman just booked a short-term rental, and then the owner had to not kick her out and have this person living in their guest house just by their property and not paying any rent for a very nice place to live in for 570 days. So almost 2 years this person was in there. So again, this is, for me, a show that politics is just not necessarily good in real estate. I don't think that in any way should happen. If someone owns their property, they should be able to decide who they rent it to. And if they're not paying rent, and the contract has expired, they should be able to evict those people. So I believe she's now moved out, so that's great. But still, it's not an ideal situation, and hopefully there will be changes so we don't see that again. We've also seen hotel development rejections. So the voters rejected the Cheval Blanc Hotel project. LA City Council voted against the Bulgari Hotel in Benedict Canyon, which was apparently due to challenging environments. Oh, sorry, it was a challenging environment for new luxury hotel developments. Again, it's a situation where locals are voting and saying, we do not want this in our area. I can kind of see both sides of that, but it is, again, a stranglehold on businesses. If you're buying a project and you've got plans for that project, and effectively it needs to be approved by the city, you are taking a risk there. But if you can't build hotels, it's going to lead again to a situation of lack of supply, and therefore these prices for these other existing hotels are going to go up dramatically. So it's something, again, that I didn't really like to see, but that was one of the big developments that we saw in 2023. The other thing was industry losses. So we saw actually a guy called Artem Tepler. He was a guy who committed suicide, unfortunately, was a multi-family or multi-unit developer. Artem Tepler, Sean Tepler, who were the team. And so I think it's Paul Sean is the other developer who was part of that team. They used to do a lot of development, and I think that the business side of now developing that real estate obviously pays a massive toll and a lot of risk on the people involved in it. So that was a headline. Very unfortunate to see that, but that again was something that we saw. Also, Century Plaza was acquired by the Rubin brothers, and the development in Century City for $1 billion. An insane amount of money again, but it was a big discount on the development's cost. So the developer spent more money on the actual property than the $1 billion that it was sold for. So again, it's probably an indication that in 2023, we saw a big downturn in that commercial real estate space where owners were probably trying to cut their losses. Again, we'll see if that continues in 2024, and I'll keep you guys updated on my thoughts, my predictions, what I think is happening. Office market challenges, another video I've done. Please go back and watch some of the videos in the past at the end of 2023. But obviously during the pandemic, we saw a big shift from people who would go into the office every single day, 9 to 5. That would be your working hours. You would go into a location that became different in the pandemic because obviously there was people not wanting to congregate, or offices or companies who had offices would say, we want you to work from home. Huge uptick in Zoom calls, in the way people did business. And so after the pandemic, 2023 was post-pandemic time, we saw a big difference where a lot of these employees were working from home. So instead of going to the office every day, maybe they went in 2-3 days a week. Maybe a lot of people worked remotely and so were not going into the office at all. Now, obviously, it's supply and demand. There was that existing supply of office buildings, of offices for people to sublet. And so those were not being used anymore. So the demand for these offices dropped off significantly. Companies could cut their costs in that way. And so you saw a lot of these businesses no longer wanting this office space. And so there was a surplus. So that was a big challenge for a lot of these office buildings. And they've got high vacancy rates, and the tenants or the businesses often that are signing these are pretty reluctant to sign long-term leases because they don't know where the business is going to be. They don't know the future of what that looks like. So again, it's something that I'm going to keep an eye on. It's a trend that I think we will continue to see, as it's kind of proved this concept forced into place that working from home can work. And it's not necessarily something that is needed by a lot of businesses. I think it's going to have a really weird effect on company culture. I think a lot of companies are not going to feel that unified because you're not meeting and interacting with other employees there. Again, my personal opinion, it's going to be interesting to see if that plays out in that way. There was also Jose Huizar's, if I'm saying that right, corruption case. He was a former LA city councilman and he pleaded guilty to corruption charges, admitting to taking bribes from developers. So corruption was kind of obviously not rife, but it was shown to be happening within LA City. And so a councilman effectively was receiving bribes to approve projects for developers. Now, if you're a developer, you should not be partaking in that. But I would say probably some of these political laws that have come in restricting what you can do may have had an effect on that. You know, if you're a developer, you've got carrying costs and suddenly you've got all these laws that have come in. No excuse again, as I say, but probably bribing a council member looks slightly more appealing in terms of your bottom line and your profit margin than it previously did. So awful that a councilman is accused of that and has pled guilty to that. And I think that's probably something we will see that is tracked a lot more closely, which is a good thing for the industry. The other big thing, and the last big thing I'm going to talk about, was the end of the rent freeze. So LA City Council actually voted to end the pandemic rent freeze. So now, as of February this year, rents can be increased. Now, this I think is going to be a very interesting development. During the pandemic, people obviously were not able, or they weren't sure about what they were going to be doing. You know, was their employment secure or not? And so therefore, they decided to say, look, you cannot do increases more than a certain percentage per year for these units. Now, that's again getting rid of the capitalist economy that we have in the US, where supply and demand, you know, if there is a lot of supply for these units and someone has it, there are people that would like to be there who are going to pay more. And so we're going to see that shift in February 2024. It's going to be very interesting to see how much rent prices go up if there are more evictions. Obviously, with the situation we talked about with the Airbnb, maybe that starts to change. I don't know. But anyway, guys, those are the main topics that I'm going to mention today. If there is anything else that I didn't discuss, which you think is a bigger story or something else I should talk about in a future video, I would love to hear it. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. And if you have any ideas for topics in the next few weeks that you would like me to get on and give my opinions to, then let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. A like, subscribe, a comment would be absolutely amazing. I'll see you tomorrow on the next video. Goodbye.